So I'm doing some transitional ideas simply because I've discovered that 897 students can come up to the end and have a lot of the same questions like, okay, now what? Should I just sit here and wait and see what happens? So I think it's better to have a clearer view of the process of transitioning from 897 to 899. One of the things I don't advertise. We used to put it like in the first. We put it in the very first announcement of the semester. And I don't advertise it now because I don't encourage it. But 897 automatically rolls over into a second semester if needed. Now, in my experience, occasionally, like we have Julie, who is a wonderful, she's like a district Methodist, leader over there in Western Kansas. She had a terrible case of COVID at the end of last semester. She's zooming along. She's going to do fine. But in my experience, a lot of folks, if they just say, what the heck, I'm just going to take a break and come back a second semester, it's too easy. Procrastination too easily leads to just getting stuck. So I don't encourage it, and I don't say much about it. But by design and by policy, 897 automatically rolls over into a second semester. It doesn't automatically roll over into a third semester. No one can take 897 more than 3 semesters. If they can't get it all done in 3 semesters, they're dropped from the program. It sounds terrible to say it that way. But that's the policy. You can't go to a third semester unless you can make a really good case. You have to make an appeal to Dr. Flynn. You have to make a really good case. You don't need that. The second semester automatically happens. You don't have to re-enroll. I report an in progress. For many years, I did the master's thesis students, and I just go in and report an IP to the registrar in progress, which means that, and the same is true for the master's interns, which means it just rolls over. And so I wouldn't want people to panic in 897, but I wouldn't want them to start procrastinating either, because it can be done in 1 semester. It truly can. Most of the time it is. And so I don't think it's too early for me to say something this evening about the transition to PMIN 899. Now, first of all, I've had some progress. Z was on, and Z and I are going to get together on the phone and discuss the implications of his statement of the problem for project design, etc. Because this is the good time. This is a good time to do it. Frederick had already some formatting issues. One of these pesky Microsoft Word formatting issues, and he found, I love to be able to deal with footnotes by themselves, so you can go in and just get the footnote view on your screen and then just deal with them. He discovered that you had to select all of them, didn't you, Frederick? Or you just did the setting. You did the line spacing setting.
Yeah, I just highlighted one of them, went to the formatting, and there's a little arrow next to it, and you can modify one, which, like just any other heading, and it'll modify all the other ones.
Yeah. So you set it single spacing, but to add, if you want a whole space, add 12 points after the single spacing, and it will essentially add the 1 space in between foot. Well, that's a great solution. So I wanted to make sure I'm so much enjoying all of Kyle. Kyle's good work is fantastic. I have to tell you, Kyle, I'm communicating specially with Dr. Flynn, because you know what? In the end, what we're doing in 897, we're doing it for Jim Flynn. I mean, it's like for an audience of 1. And so he's the guy that's going to get our work, and he's going to decide what he thinks about it. And then he is going to use it as the basis for appointing a chair who will then be in charge. But what I don't want to do for any 897 student is give Dr. Flynn something from them only to have them say, really, that's not going to work. Send it back. That I don't want to do. So I want to make sure that what we do is successful. So occasionally I'll say, okay, by the way, Jim, I've got this fantastic student in California who is passionate and excited and is doing enough work that he could literally write his book now. And I just want to know, what's your tolerance for a proposal? I mean, how much is too much really? Because I've already discovered that he's, the work from 700, you remember the work you did in 700? Most students came up with 25 pages or so for their, we call it, because I'm doing 700 now as well, we call it a review of the literature, which it isn't really, technically speaking. It kind of combines a lot of stuff together, but a lot of those documents seem to be around 25 pages. I know Jim will tolerate 25 pages, even though the chair will ask for it to be reduced. So I just want to know, okay, what are you going to be good with? Because whatever you're good with, that's what I'm going to send you, because I want these students to succeed. Go ahead, Frederick.
So I have a question about that. If at the end of the day, we have to write 25 pages, for example, why would they reduce it to 10 and put us through the work of reducing it, knowing that we're going to have to turn around and write it again? Isn't that just a whole lot of extra work?
No, you want to save everything, but because the procedure, let me tell you how it will work further down the road, Frederick. This is further down the road than I'm going to talk about tonight. But when you're ready, for instance, to work on chapter 2, your chair says, okay, let's jump into chapter 2. The instruction will be, take your summary of the literature section from your proposal, copy it and paste it into a document and expand it to be chapter 2. Use the same headings, the same structure, just unpack it a little bit more. Now that works really well. If somebody's got 12 pages, 15 pages even, that works really well. Because in the end, we want, because I think currently chairing 5 different committees. We want chapter 1 to be the introduction. We don't want to have to read all that stuff twice. And so chapter 1 needs to be the introduction, and then chapter 2 will expand upon something in the introduction. Chapter 3 will expand upon something in the introduction. And so the introduction really is designed, first of all, to convince Jim Flynn that you've got a good plan and tell him who he thinks ought to be your chair. And then it will be the way you are introduced to your chair. So it's important, the proposal it needs to function that way. And so I want to make sure that what you do functions that way. And then Jim's going to want to make sure that what he ends up saying you need to do before you pass off to the chair is going to work that way. So save everything. Don't take anything away from any of the work that you're doing, because all of it will be useful in the end. Even if you're going to write a multi-volume, set of, encyclopedias or whatever, all the work that you're doing is going to be very, very good. So I love the work that everyone is doing. I would rather you do too much than not enough. The other day, I have a really good brother who was writing chapter 3 for his dissertation. He sent me 15 pages. I said, you need to double it at least. You need to double it at least. Now, it's actually more difficult than at that point. So I would rather you do too much work than not enough. Save all of it. Don't remove any of it from the work that you are doing. And so piece number 1, now we're anticipating 899. April the 29th, of course, is the last day of the spring semester. You know how it goes. The registrar is in control of those final dates. The registrar tells us when we must submit our grades. So 5:00 p.m., May the 4th, we have to submit grades to the registrar, and only after that will she begin to enter them into the record. And we can't rush the registrar as much as we would like to sometimes. But it's fine. It works fine, because I find the dean's office, and we're all there now for spring semester. I'll, the Lord willing, I've purchased my airplane ticket. We'll be in Virginia Beach. I was going to be there last year, and I came down with COVID as I was getting ready to leave, which it was just the devil, quite frankly. So I've already purchased mine, and we love, these are fantastic meetings for folks. We tend to put, 20,000 people out on the grounds and graduate like 2,500 folks. They're fantastic, and we have a commissioning on Thursday morning. And so there's plenty of time to get all the work done. The summer semester does not begin until May the 8th. So you don't need to have confirmation of 899 until May the 8th. So don't get overly excited. The registrar is in control of those dates. So the very first thing, and you can anticipate this now, is the HSR application process. And so I've made a folder in course resources called the HSR resources that includes all the relevant links. It includes the links to, for instance, the HSR section of Regent University's website. And it also includes the link to the training course. The training course you can begin to do now, if you feel like you've got the time. So it's the Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative, CITI training course. That has to be done, and you have a certificate. It gives you a certificate. I did the training myself because I wanted to be aware of the details of the HSR process, even though the chair has nothing to do with the HSR process. I wanted to be aware of it. And you can do the training anytime you want. You can do it before the end of the spring semester, because you will get a certificate, a completion certificate, which you will send on to Dr. Flynn. Dr. Story used to be in charge of the HSR process. Dr. Story, I think, has retired. He's just a wonderful guy. But Dr. Flynn, as if he didn't have enough work to do, is now responsible for this process. You will have to provide him with a copy of the training course completion certificate as you begin to work on the application form. Also, the form is there. The form is in Blackboard. So I recommend you download the application form and look at it. So you have you can kind of anticipate what's coming up, the questions that you need to be able to answer, all the details that you need to be able to provide, which you've never had to provide before. So, Dr. Flynn's going to want to see the forms filled out. You're going to have people sign off, giving you permission to use them as a participant, whatever the case might be. And so all of that is apparent in the application form. I recommend you look at it, download it and look at it, take the CITI training course, get your certificate, so that when we come to May the 8th, the first day of the summer semester, you'll be roaring and ready to go. That's something you can anticipate. The HSR process is fairly rigorous. And so sometimes I've discovered that students, at 897 students that really don't understand how rigorous it is, are a little bit sideswiped by it. So if you can kind of anticipate it, I think it takes some of the, there's no shock treatment then involved in it. You know exactly what's coming up. You're ready. You've already done some thinking. Maybe even you've started to fill in the application a little bit here and there. So you're ready to go when we get to the summer semester. The application, if it's deemed to be safe, not a risky project, and frankly, that's the bottom line. If it's not a risky project, it could take as little as 2 weeks to approve. And so that's fairly even. If it's considered risky, now already in the 700 class, I had a student saying that she wanted to do a series of surveys of victims of church abuse. And I wanted to say, God bless you, that's so great. It's never going to happen. That application will be rejected. Because if the view is you're trying to access a vulnerable population, that's something that you'll learn in your training course. First of all, every single school's human services representative will have to get involved. They're going to want to appoint a psychologist or a psychiatrist to work along with you. Getting that application approved could take 2 or 3 years. Just forget it. There is a safe way to get the same data. Let me tell you how it's done, because we've had to do it before. And so this HSR application, you want it to be as fast as possible. And so if it seems to be safe, it's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep participants safe. It's going to keep the university safe. It can happen very quickly. Yes, Frederick.
So one of the questions that I had was, I don't know what the limitations are on our communicating about the venues and the people that we want to do these, for example, a curriculum of awareness or a project with. So for example, you said what you need to limit your project statement. So I said 3 churches. I know the churches and the pastors that I want to be able to work with, but I haven't said a thing because I don't know what I am and am not allowed to say. Am I allowed to start communicating with these pastors and say, hey, look, I am in a dissertation project. I'm coming up. I'm interested to be able to do that. And even, or do I have to wait until the HSR application is complete before I even bring it up?
Now you have to wait, because along with the communication is going to be a form that they will have to sign. And that form is not approved until accepted in the application. Now you remember the proposal is just anticipating. It's not anything formal yet. So the proposal is kind of just giving folks a sense of where you want to be. And so it's okay to list the 3 churches, Frederick, knowing that they may not end up being the 3 churches, or hopefully they will end up being the 3 churches, but they're the 3 churches you hope will be involved in your project. And so you list that in the proposal, because it's anticipating what it is you would like to do. With the HSR process, you will literally then have the form approved that you will use to get participants to sign off on, but you still have to get them to sign off on it before they're officially participants. And so it's a bit of a work in progress. Gaining access, I found when I did a Doctor of Education program years ago. Gaining access to participants is the first and a little bit of a tricky process. I mean, they have to want to do it. So you have to explain what you want to do, what the safeguards that you're building in, et cetera, et cetera. And then they need to sign off on it, and they don't have to sign off on it. So that's not going to happen till, that's one of the very first steps in the process of doing your research, which you cannot do until all of that process has been officially approved. So, I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it either. It's best to just finally let, and Dr. Flynn is so fantastic in him saying, you know what, I love your design, but we need to do more to get the signed participation for a couple of these folks. So please submit the appropriate forms and et cetera. And he'll coach you through the application. And finally, you'll be ready to go. It could take as little as 2 weeks. I still have a 899 student in his second semester who still doesn't have his HSR application approved. It was not approved at first by Jim because it was accessing a vulnerable population in the Marine Corps. So I said, look, and usually Jim will contact me and say, I think there's a simple fix to this. Can you work together with your student to suggest some safer approaches? So we did that, and Jim approved his application, but then he had to send it through the hierarchy, where it still is. I guess it can get stuck in the military hierarchy, I guess. It certainly isn't for this good brother. So usually it can happen quite quickly. The more you can anticipate now the kinds of details you will have to provide for Dr. Flynn, the quicker it's going to happen. In terms of timetable, your final proposal draft is approved. Again, I'm the one to approve it, and I approve it with Dr. Flynn in mind. So I want to know that you're giving him what he wants to see. And I'm not going to give him something unless I know he wants to see it. That's why occasionally at the end, if I see a couple of little formatting issues, I'll just fix them. And I'll tell the student, it was an easy fix. I fixed it. Please take a look at it because your chair's not going to fix stuff for you. But I want you to move forward and begin to engage in your process. And so I will approve your final draft and send it on to Dr. Flynn. Again, I won't do that unless I know he's going to like what he sees. And he generally does. And so after April the 29th, remembering the registrar's schedule, we're required to report final grades by 5:00 p.m. Eastern Time on May the 3rd, and then she will have until May the 8th to process all of the thousands of grades, as you can imagine, until May the 8th to process all of that so that you can move forward. A couple of things will happen immediately. Dr. Flynn will assign you a dissertation chair and will personally communicate with you. Now, he won't even tell me the chair he assigned to you. I will not have that information. So once you're done in 897, then you're done with me, unless for some reason I'm assigned to be your chair, which happens not that often, because we can only chair so many committees. He will assign you a chair and he will communicate directly with you as to who that person is. He will also communicate with your chair, send him a copy of your proposal. And then a couple of things will happen simultaneously. Now, listen, you don't enroll in 899. Once Dr. Flynn has done that, the dean's office will enroll you in 899. And I guess, I'm not a student working with advising, so I don't know what that looks like on your computer screen. But you should be able to see then at the appropriate time that, yes, you are for the summer and semester enrolled in 899. Now, by the way, I didn't include this, but I think all of you know, because you're well familiar with our doctorate ministry program, that 899 also automatically rolls over into a second semester. Although you get credit for 2 semesters of 899. It does not automatically roll over into a third semester. What happens is that it automatically rolls over into 899A. You all familiar with the difference? So 899 is 3 credits. You're paying for 3 credits. 899A keeps you in the dissertation phase, but it's only 1 credit. You only pay for 1 credit. So it's essentially nothing changes except it becomes less spendy. And you remember, you've got 7 years to complete the entire doctorate of ministry program. I have a student now, an 899 student now, who is about to use up her 7th year, which is kind of scary. So you can stay in 899A for a while, but you want to push, and you want your chair to push you while being polite about it. And so it's the dean's office who will enroll you in PMIN899, and you can anticipate that will become apparent as you come into the summer semester. You will then send a copy of your training certificate to Dr. Flynn and begin to do the application, begin to fill out the application. He will partner with you in that process. Send him all you've got at first. Don't be a perfectionist about, I don't know if I'm missing a couple of pieces. Well, you probably are, but I wouldn't worry about that. Send Dr. Flynn what you have and let him coach you through the completion of your HSR application. The approved proposal that I send to Dr. Flynn will be sent by him to your chair. And your chairs first, once you and your chair begin to convert, and all of our faculty just have such a great heart for our DMIN students. Immediately, you and your chair, and I don't think it hurts for you to reach out and say, by the way, Dr. Flynn told me that you're going to be my chair. Thank you so much. I appreciate the honor, et cetera, et cetera. You're kind of expressing your gratitude, et cetera, because they're going to be your person until you're done with the entire process. So the chair then will begin working with you to convert your proposal into the final official chapter 1. Your proposal is not chapter 1 until your chair says it's chapter 1. And I know it's frustrating because I've been chairing dissertation committees since 2004. but your chair is entirely in control of the dissertation writing process. And so it will be very, very, very successful to the extent that you say, yes, ma'am, that's what I'm going to do. And so that your chair will have to approve chapter one. I talked to an adjunct the other day, and he said, such and such person, I got their proposal, and they said, by the way, that's an approved chapter one. I said, you know, as often as I tell that to 897 students, some of them still hope to get the adjunct chair to believe what is not true. That's not an approved chapter one. It's not chapter one until the chair says it's chapter one. And he or she will have the right to, for instance, say, okay, you got too many pages in your summary of the literature. This is the introduction. And so we're going to work together on chapter two, but we're not doing it now. We're going to make sure we have a really good introduction, a really good chapter one. So they will begin to work with you to convert your proposal into chapter one while you're doing the application. So you've got two tracks going. You have Dr. Flynn, who is completely in control of the HSR process. The chair has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. Unless Dr. Flynn says, you know, we've hit a wall. Can you help me, so-and-so, whoever the chair is, communicate together with, let's see if we can find a good solution. That doesn't happen very often. So Dr. Flynn is in complete control of the essentially setting you up to do your project. Your chair is in complete control of the composition of your dissertation chapters. So there's like two tracks going. I mean, you're on both tracks, because ultimately chapters 4 and 5, as you know, report the details of your project and then the findings of a project that your chair had nothing essentially to do with. But they're going to approve the composition of your report. And so, and you know, occasionally we have to talk to a chair and say, okay, you really don't have the authority to mess with the brother's or the sister's project. His project has been approved. The details have been approved by the HSR process. You cannot bump it. But you get to approve the actual writing of the chapters that report both the project design details and then the findings. So you'll go together kind of that way. So here's semester one, 899. Dr. Flynn is in control of the HSR application process. You'll work together with him. He's very easy to work with. No aspect, and Frederick brought this up, no aspect of the project research is allowed until a final HSR application is approved. Because all of the ways that you're going to communicate have to be approved. There's documentation every step along the way. And so just kind of hang on. You know, occasionally I'll have an 897 student say, I'm excited about jumping in and beginning my project. Oh, no, please do not do that. Because if you do, I hate to tell you, Dr. Flynn will make you throw all of that out and start over from scratch. And I know you don't want to do that. So please don't. Just hang on. It's going to be fine. Everything will work together the way it needs to work. And then, of course, the chair will begin to work with you in the finalization of chapter one. The chair is in control of the dissertation writing process. Now, one of the things I would like you to anticipate, it's in the DMIN handbook, but I find that a lot of 899 students are not clear. I would recommend almost from the beginning, even now, I would recommend, I think it was with Ross, because Ross worked a lot behind the scenes with Matt Fredwell on some of his ideas. And I said, okay, Matt is no longer, after the spring semester, he's not going to be on the faculty anymore, but I think he would love to be a second reader. A second reader is officially your project mentor. So they need to be somebody who you feel can be useful in advising you when it comes to the conduct of your project. So they're not going to speak into the composition of your chapters, of your dissertation chapters, although they will read your dissertation just before your defense. But they're the ones who are going to be available. Think of someone, if you can, even now, Think of someone who you think would have the needed expertise to be useful to you as an advisor. Now, the DMIN handbook says they need to have a relevant terminal degree, but I'm aware that if they have sufficient expertise without a terminal degree, they still can be approved. Your chair is the one who will have to approve the second reader. And so you can make a case for that person, and it's pretty easy to do. I had a brother last summer who did a really great dissertation on Messianic Judaism, and he had a very good relationship with a rabbi, a Messianic Jewish rabbi. He had his MDiv, but he did not have a terminal degree. But this brother was, I mean, he was the guy. He had to be the guy. So I approved, and I said, absolutely, because then your chair will end up in preparing for the defense, in working with this person to set up your defense and kind of partner at the end of the process. So I think it's okay to anticipate that now. You know, it's early, it's still early. But if you can wonder in your mind, okay, who would make a great advisor for me when I begin to really dig into collecting and analyzing data? And then let them become a part. They don't need to from the beginning, but especially when you have your application approved by Dr. Flynn and you're starting to reach out and gather some of that data, it's good to have someone alongside of you. Now, I've converted this into a PDF, so don't worry about any of this except, and again, this is something I usually give to 899 students right at the beginning of our semester together. Data collection analysis tools. There are, as you, I'm sure, know, software applications that will do. They're excellent place for you to record data as you collect it, and then they will do certain kinds of analysis for you and coach you in that process. Now, unless you're an expert, for instance, in Microsoft Excel and know how to get spreadsheets to do everything you want them to do, some of these applications can be useful. I'm going to just give you slides, but again, these are all going to be in a PDF version. I want to make sure that you have, just so you know that they exist. So there's kind of a general one. Nota Bene is kind of a general application tool that will enable you to put all of the notes that you're, even research notes that you all have been doing already. Everything that you're doing in writing, you can put it in one place because it will then organize. It's like it creates a searchable database for you. Then it's easy for you to go in and access whatever you feel down the road you want to access. There is qualitative data analysis tools. One is the Tetra Insights tool that will help you both organize your qualitative data as well as analyze it. One of the things you will find that if you're collecting qualitative data, you have to identify themes and you have to code the data with those themes in mind, so you can then come around and analyze connections, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this will help you do it. I mean, to have to do that by yourself in like in a Word document or whatever, I think could be a nightmare. And so you want your data analysis to be meaningful. And so having some kind of an application that will coach you in that and then essentially do that for you. So you've coded your qualitative data and then you tell the software, okay, I want you to analyze the connection between these three themes or whatever it might be. So you can do your analysis in a way that will equal empirical research at that point. There's another qualitative, I think this is the industry standard, for instance, a qualitative data analysis software application called InVivo. And it's probably, it's one that more people will recognize, and I think will give you some really good analysis when you come to, frankly, writing chapter 5. It's trickier when it comes to quantitative data analysis, because all of your data, at least like even if you did a Likert scale, survey, and you have a sufficiently large sample and you want to turn your data into numbers. And then you want a software application to do the analysis of various kinds of analysis. The industry standard is SPSS. It's an IBM application. It's, again, unless you're an expert in the use of Microsoft Excel, you definitely want something like this. And so you just load your data in, and then you tell it what you want to tell you when it comes to data analysis. I think you're probably aware of this speech recognition. One of the things that I think is important with this is, for instance, if you do an interview, you're going to want to record the interview, and then you're going to want to produce a transcription of the recording. Now, back in the day, we didn't have software that did that for us. I mean, we had to, put the headphones on. We had this kind of a tape player that with a foot pedal, and you started and stopped and started. Okay, we need to back up a little bit, and then you started and stopped again. It takes forever. Well, now you can just feed your audio recording of an interview into this kind of a software package. So far as I know, Dragon Professional may be available to our DMIN students free of charge. I know it is to the faculty. I can't say that for sure. But it's something that's easy to use, and it's going to save you hundreds of hours. And then immediately that transcription becomes a data set for your analysis software to work on, to do what you tell it to do in terms of answering the questions that you have. That's very, very handy, especially with those kinds of qualitative instruments that you use. So I'm going to stop sharing and just find out. Once again, I've made all of that available on a PDF, so you don't have to try to remember it, but I think some of it is useful. So let me ask you whether or not you have any questions, even though we've anticipated the beginning of May, whether or not you have any questions about this kind of transitional ideas, processes. Anybody? Glorstein, how are you? It looks like you sank. It looks like you sank down. You were so overwhelmed by all that, you just sank down into your chair.
No, I moved the screen. No, I'm fine. I mean, you made it very clear on, the transition process and what to expect. So it's very clear about the HSR process and not really getting involved in any research until that application is submitted. And, it's just, everything is pretty straightforward. I mean, I took notes. So it's a lot of information.
Yes.
I'm not overwhelmed, but, it's certainly a lot to consider. But it's good also to have a heads up on what to expect.
Yeah, no, I think it's better than coming to the end of the semester and say, okay, now what?
Now what? And I was kind of at that point, and I have a friend who's going through the process and wouldn't give me a lot of information because, it wasn't time for me to receive that information. And it's like, no need to get yourself worked up about this because you're not even at the process yet.
So she wanted you to suffer like she suffered.
Well, I don't know, but I understand now, what she was saying. So no, I mean, I'm pretty clear on, what to expect and the resources that are available for quantitative and qualitative, data collection. So I'm okay.
You know
I
what
don't have any questions right now.
What I love to do, guys, I think it just reflects the DMIN program that I was in over 22 years ago, was cohort based, if you know what I mean. There was a block of us that came in at the same time, and we moved like a pig in a python all the way through together. And so what I love to do is if I can get like 3 new 899 students at once, then I'll form them into a cohort and we'll do Zoom meetings together. And they will kind of be able to update each other on how it is working. What questions am I having so far? Why have I hit this kind of a bump along the way? Because I still, I think it can get kind of lonely out there, reading and writing and doing research. So I think the more we can support and encourage one another along the way, I think that can be helpful as well. Yeah, Frederick.
I want to clarify something. I know that you've mentioned that some of what we write becomes, for example, chapter 2. Is it repeated? Is there a shorter version in chapter 1 and then a longer version in chapter 2? Is that what you're saying?
The short version is in chapter 1. Now, I shouldn't maybe tell you this, but I'm doing so because you are all exceptionally intelligent. The very last thing you will do just before your defense, and I usually wait till down the road to say this because I don't want to aggravate people more than I need to, is Dr. Flynn, your chair will ask you to go back into chapter 1, convert your summary of the literature section in your BTH Foundation section from a summary to an abstract. In other words, make it 4 or 5 pages long. Because what you do is going to be published. I mean, it's going to be official. It's going to be out there. You're making a contribution to the literature. You're now a scholar in residence when it comes to your area. And so they're looking, we don't want to tell them too much in the beginning. We're going to save as much of our thunder as we can. And so that's kind of the process. So the proposal leads you to chapter 1, which is the introduction. The introduction is still, it can be a little meaty because what you're doing for 897, you're highlighting all the key points and all the key sources that you've got so far, except your research is going to continue down the road. So it's not like when you're done April 29th, all your research, you're never going to research anymore again. So you're going to keep researching down the road. And so we're just introduction chapter 1, and this is your first step with your chair. They want it to be just an introduction. Don't reveal your good stuff too fast. And then we're going to save that for chapter 2 and for chapter 3. But the final, I mean, if you will look at dissertations in ProQuest, especially the more recent ones, they don't give you a lot of it. They give you enough information to pique your interest. You know, they want to make you want to read your whole dissertation. So they're going to give you the good stuff, just like abstracts are designed to do. Even the beginning abstract is designed to make you interested. And give you some key words, etc. It's going to be similar. All this it's not a 350-page abstract, as you know. If you're a 4 to 5 page abstract is a little more than an abstract, but Dr. Flynn will refer to it as an abstract. That's the very last thing you do. So I think all you need to worry about now is, okay, when does my proposal become chapter 1? Well, it's when it looks like the introduction. And when it looks like the introduction, then it's chapter 1. And at that point in time, you move on to really lay out all your good stuff in chapter 2 and in chapter 3. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. That really helped.
Mr. Bauer.
So as I've been working on the BTH foundations and all that stuff, we've already done the literature review. Is it common for students, because I think I'm running into this as well, to realize that there's some books that I put in the literature review that I am not pulling from as much as I thought I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
And I come across others that it's like, oh, this is a much better book for a literature review. And then at some point go back and rework the literature review a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think, because you remember, you're not doing a literature review, even though that language is used in 700. It's not, technically speaking, a literature review. Right. So for us, you're doing a summary of the literature. The review of the literature happens in chapter 2, and there's no question you're going to be doing more research between now and then. Right. And I wouldn't even worry about that. Okay. I just you know, you want an introduction. You want a clear, succinct, kind of a helpful introduction in chapter 1, but you're not making the claim that this is all your good stuff, or you're not even claiming that you're introducing all the good stuff. You're
Right.
just introducing your dissertation and your project. You remember chapters 2 and chapter 3 are designed to provide background research. They're the warrant. Dr. Flynn likes to use the word warrant. They're the justification for your project. So when it comes to the DMIN dissertation, the primary thing is the project,
Right.
not the background research. Although the good news is, and I've got a couple of good brothers who are finishing their dissertation and will do their defense in June. I said, to be honest, in most cases, chapters 4 and 5 will be more like 20 pages instead of 30,
Mhm.
because you're just giving us the facts at that point.
Right.
You're not unpacking anything. You're just telling us what you did.
Mhm.
Just give us the facts. But that ends up being the main thing. So what we do in chapters 2 and 3 sets the stage. It creates the background justification for why it is we're doing this project and what it is we hope to learn from it.
So when you do the chapter 2 literature, the literature review, the actual chapter 2,
Yeah.
it's not so much that it's like, well, I'm pulling on this book for all of this other research. It's like, I have consulted these things and these are the foundation and underpinnings
Yeah.
for why I do what I do, even if you don't heavily pull from these things. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think so, because there's still some summary to the extent that you have maybe a broader, and Kyle, you have a fantastic project and a fantastic vision for the project. It's a little bit broad
Mhm.
in that it's going to create the need for more background information than what might be needed otherwise.
Mhm.
Which is fine. So it's harder to force yourself to summarize because you don't want to leave anything out. You don't want to leave anything that really you feel is a major contributor to the vision that you have for your project and its significance. And so it becomes harder. I think I mentioned earlier, my good brother who did his dissertation on Messianic Judaism. He was so excited and passionate. I mean, this guy, and he's got an actual rabbi who his second reader, and he's out there doing the stuff with all kinds of really interesting people. And he got so excited, he gave me a 136-page chapter 3. I said, brother, I love your stuff, man. I love your passion. I remember listening to the old albums from Lamb. Did you ever remember the Messianic Jewish group called Lamb?
No.
I said, I'm one of those old guys. I remember when I was doing my master's degree in Old Testament studies, I remember doing a lot of this research. But listen, it's 136 pages for chapter 3 is too much. We want people to actually read your dissertation. So if you can just suck in some of your passion a little bit, be kind of dry, don't get so excited, no preaching. You don't need to give an altar call at the end of every chapter to try to convince people that, this is, and I don't think this argument over here is really contributing anything to your project. I think it's okay to just leave it out. He decided to explore eschatology. And he wanted to see which schools of eschatology had the greatest record of being anti-Semitic. I said, well, first of all, I disagree with you. Second of all, I don't think that information is helping you. So can we leave out those 40 pages? I think it will be okay. So what I would do is I would put a lot of confidence in the process with your chair when you get down to, if you send your chair, even if they're the greatest 100 pages in the world and really good stuff, like I've already done with you, Kyle. If I was your chair, I would come back and say, Kyle, I can see a book, man. I see a book. You've got to get ready to write your book. Yeah. Because we don't need your book in the dissertation. Right. This is about the project. It's about setting the stage for the project. It's about reporting data and analysis. It's kind of dry. It's not real exciting, but you've unpacked some really, really fantastic, valuable stuff that you're going to want to take it postdoc. Mm-hmm. I encourage 899 students to do a postdoc project because the DMIN project is designed to be very narrow and very concrete and very specific. So you're proposing an intervention, you're testing the intervention, but you're doing it in with enough of that focused detail that somebody can come behind you and repeat the experiment, as it were,
Right.
and in their own context. So you end up leaving out a lot of really interesting stuff. So it's not uncommon for me to encourage an 899 student, you need to do some additional research. You need to take it beyond what you've done for your project, and you need to publish it in a book, because what you've done is too important to just ignore or just put in a file somewhere. But you don't need all of that to do your project, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm like you. In fact, when I did my dissertation, I kept getting lost in the research, and finally, my poor chair had to say, "Larry, you got enough, man. You've got enough. You've written enough." Listen, my dissertation ended up being 250 pages long, and he's having to tap the brakes. Okay, enough. That's enough. Are you sure? I just overnight I got a vision to add this to chapter 2. No. You don't need to add anything. You need to stop now. I said, but this is the fun part for me. It maybe is for you, but it isn't for me. We need to get on. We need to get on with this process. So if you love researching, I understand how fulfilling and exciting that is. In the end, you have to decide what's helping me to make the very best case possible for my project, what will contribute as a background warrant for me doing what I'm going to do on my project. But I'm not going to discard any of this good stuff I've discovered.
Right.
I'm going to do a postdoc project and publish it as a book. Not uncommon.
Awesome.
Right, Rodney, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, sir. I can't complain.
Rodney's got a good project. His project is going to be great. Z is an old friend of mine. Z, I think we did your internship together, didn't we, in your MDiv program? But Z he's like a powerhouse youth minister down there in Southern California. He's got a really great project, but we're going to do some work behind the scenes together too, so that he feels confident going forward. You want to have a sense that you understand the details of your project in the end well enough that you can just put it into gear and go far and get it done, and enjoy the process. So I appreciate all the really, really good work that you're doing. Pastor Bob is a busy man, but he's done some really good work. I don't think you're going to have any problem, Bob, with either with your proposal or with your dissertation and your project process. It's a good, clear, focused, kind of a pastoral, some really good cross-cultural elements in there in your area of Texas that are going to be so very, very good. So I just love all the work that all of you are doing. Any final questions? It's 5:59. Can I pray for you, and then I'm going to stop the recording? And then the folks who feel like they want to jump in, I hope, giving a bit of a heads up is not intimidated for anybody and say, oh my gosh, it's even worse than I thought it was going to be. Well,
that's me over here. That's me over here. I'm over here like, fuck, I got myself into.
No, Z. And again, your audio is I don't know, something's messing up your computer, but our phones work really well. So we'll get together and make sure that you feel I want you to feel confident going forward. It should not be intimidating. It should actually be inspirational and exciting. Z, be confident, man. We're going to work on that together. So let me pray, and let's keep the other folks in our class together. I haven't heard from our brother Tom Wilcox, who had a full hip replacement surgery, you remember? And I would love to see how he's doing. I've called him a couple of times. God bless Brother Tom. Of course, Kirsten is big and pregnant. I don't know how the weeks work, Laura Steen, but she tells me 35 weeks. That means she's big and pregnant. And moving, I don't know, moving into a new house. And I said, what was Colton thinking, getting you to move into a new house in the midst of all of this? And so I think it's good for us to pray for each other along the way, and just ask the Holy Spirit to cover us and to guide us and carry us along and encourage us along the way. So let's pray. Father, we thank you that you are the one who has directed us this far. All of these students have really done a lot of work the last couple of years, have done a lot of work, and they're ready to go. They're ready to really jump into the context that they have had a vision for and really make a difference. And so I pray for favor, even when they begin the process of gaining access to the participants they feel that they need and want. Give them favor, give them open doors. I pray that people will catch the vision along with them and be excited with them about what it is that they want to do and accomplish. So we're trusting in you for a great finish to this experience. We're trusting in you then to lead each one forward into continue to be in the center of your will when it comes to their ministry, a contribution in this program. We thank you and praise you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, my friends.